You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
All right, so we're back with Laura Brand, our serial killer whisperer, and someone we've had on the podcast before, who a lot of people in the true crime community know, Andy Kahan. He's back with us, based out of Houston, Crime Stoppers. Welcome back, Kenny. Welcome back.
I'm a repeat offender.
You're a repeat offender.
Tell us a little bit about Crime Stoppers in Houston, so people can know what you're
it's been a while.
working so hard on.
We are the largest Crime Stoppers in the country in Houston. We're the only Crime Stoppers in the country with its own standing building. And we're the only Crime Stoppers in the country with a schmuck like me that runs their victim services and victim advocacy program. So we're very unique in Houston. We're a major part of the community, and we solve more cases than any other Crime Stoppers in the country. So all our tips are anonymous. We don't want to know who you are. We usually give out up to $5,000 on any felony. And then, of course, anybody can increase the rewards as well. We paid the largest reward in our history a few months ago, which was $100,000 to one tipster. So whoever that tipster is, thank you. And you walked away with $100,000. So that's kind of where I am now. So I run their victim services program. I've been doing victim advocacy now for over 30 years. I started in the mayor's office, 1992. I was the first victim advocate to be staffed out of a mayor's office. Then I went over to Houston Police Department. And then in 2018, Crime Stoppers, in the proverbial Godfather fashion, made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And just when I thought I was getting out, they lured me back in.
They always do. It's what always happens. You think you're getting out, and then you get sucked back in.
Lured me back in, and it's been like a marriage made in heaven. I don't have to duck, dodge, and dive. I don't have to worry about the political snakes coming after me. So it's the best thing that ever happened. So I do an awful lot of legislative work on behalf of enhancing victims' rights and public safety. I've been responsible for passing over 25 pieces of legislation. And last session actually was one of the better sessions I've ever had, when we ended up actually getting 7 bills passed on victims' rights and safety. So then you guys will love this. We started a really new cool project. It's precedent setting. And we started recording victims and victims' families' videos for the parole board under the premise that no one is guaranteed anything. And we have a lot of families whose offenders are sent to prison, and they're going to be sent for quite a while, meaning they're not going to be parole eligible for 20, 30, some odd years. And realistically, a lot of the families aren't going to be around. So we thought, how do we preserve their voice, and how do we make sure the parole board does hear from them whenever this individual does come up for parole? And we started a project. We've completed 66 videos with victims' families who either have a pending parole hearing or will eventually have a parole hearing down the road. I really love this project.
That's super smart. Oh my God, it's really so smart. We've been working with, we worked with Nina Salerno. I don't know if you know her in California Crime Victims United. She's a prosecutor now. But but we were preparing to do a show with her about this exact thing, because her biggest thing was like, you're not going to get out for 20 years. Half of these people are going to be gone. And that is brilliant. It's so great that you're doing that. What a great project.
Yeah. When I come up and see you guys next month, I'll show you some of the video.
Yeah. Andy's going to be at CrimeCon with us. This is our first CrimeCon, so you have to tell us what to do. You can see. Laura's a veteran too. Rob and I are new. We're like,
no, I think Laura and I appeared at our first one simultaneously in 2021 in Austin. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Andy, this is really interesting because we've been talking about this a lot. We have a new podcast that we're going to be launching soon. It's about Lenine Rogers, who is was a deaf woman who went missing in 1981, and her daughter spent the past 20 years, 40 years, well, the past 20 really as an adult, advocating for her mother. And we talk about this a lot on our podcast, and how victims' families, if they're not getting any resources or if they don't know where to get the resources, they have to advocate for themselves. So it's great to hear about you and your organization, but I just kind of wanted you to tell us a little bit about what does it mean to be a victim advocate and how can you help these people?
Yeah, so I'm really glad you brought a scenario like that up, because we just did a press conference last month announcing our victim portal. And if you go to our Crime Stoppers website, we created a victim portal, not just for victims in Houston and Harris County, but for the entire state of Texas, where they can access resources, access questions, kind of go from different stages of victimization that you're in and get the answers that you need, from reporting the crime to post-conviction as well. So I've been, I serve on the board of Parents of Murdered Children and Surviving Family Members of Homicide, which is the only organization in the country in which someone else writes out your membership for you. No one has to be part of this group. We meet at Crime Stoppers the second Tuesday of every month. And we usually have 40, 50 some odd people, families, who unfortunately have lost a family member to homicide. They're also attended by law enforcement and members of the district attorney's office who we partner with. So we have a really good group of individuals in the criminal justice system and those who didn't ask to be part of the system that attend these meetings. So that's one of the things that we have. I also serve on the board, speaking of missing people, of Texas EquiSearch.
Tim Miller.
We know Tim Miller.
Tim and I are very good friends.
He actually was just working on this case, Molly Miller and Colt Haynes in Oklahoma.
Where they
just found the remains and were able to identify them after 13 years. It's a miracle.
Yeah, Tim and I go back a long way. We affectionately call ourselves the last living dinosaurs. We're still roaming the earth, and of course some people want us extinct, but we're still here. We're still doing what we want. So yeah, I serve on their board. I've been with them for quite a while in search and rescue. I've been part of search and rescues, and then I kind of work the back end if it's a case involving criminal conduct, which last week we did when a pregnant woman went missing. She's 8 months pregnant, went missing, and Tim actually found her body last week. And the perpetrator,
I saw that.
Dante Allen, and we just arrested the suspect in Louisiana. He's being extradited back here and facing capital murder charges.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
The first time we met you and we heard what you were doing, you're just doing it. Like I follow you online constantly, and it's just, I don't understand. And you've really taken something, and how do we mass produce what you're doing?
Right.
Because I know they have Crime Stoppers at other cities and stuff, but it seems like you're doing it the best.
Part of the issue when I was in the mayor's office, I was, how come other cities aren't doing this? And, the only answer I could come up with was because it's very rare to have someone in government who's actually pointing out the flaws of other governmental agencies and live to tell about it. Mm-hmm. So in the mayor's office, I had numerous attempts on my career and so forth, because when you are putting out stuff that needs to be changed, you're stepping on toes. And sometimes the toes don't like it and they bite back. So you have to have someone, our first mayor that was, I call a visionary, pioneer, that understood that what I do isn't going to please everybody. There was a press conference with Mayor Bob Lanier in the early 90s when I started there, and a reporter asked Lanier, something that I might have done that might have offended somebody, which I can't imagine me offending anyone. But they asked the mayor about something that I might have offended. And Bob Lanier turned to that reporter and he said, look, I don't expect Mr. Kahan to please the criminal element. 30 years later, that line still resonates.
Good.
When you advocate on behalf of one faction, you will infuriate the other faction.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And so it's rare to have someone in government that can actually withstand all the pot shots that are going to come at you. So that's one of the reasons why you don't see people like me, because basically you're limited in scope. A lot of entities like, district attorney's office, police departments, they have victim units, but you hardly ever hear anything from them.
Well, so and also a lot of people come to us because they're like, well, we don't have any other recourse. We don't know where to go. We don't know what to do. We've even had police departments reach out to us to say, can you help us? Because we have all these missing people and all these cases that are cold that we can't get any movement on. So it's great to hear this, that there is like what you're doing. Like Rob said, how can we mirror that in other places around the country to help grow this amazing organization that you've turned this into?
Yeah, you were talking earlier on that you need to clone yourself. I think we do need to clone you.
I think so.
Our CEO, God bless our CEO, Rania Mankarius, that basically, was a visionary and said, I want you to do what you're doing. Don't worry about people coming at you. We're behind you. And we understand that, in order to enact change, you got to piss some people off. And I have no qualms about pissing people off. I actually refereed high school basketball for 28 years. And I use the same analogy of refereeing a basketball game as I do with this job. When I blow the whistle and make the call, half the crowd agrees with it, right? The other half disagrees no matter what I call. So you know what? I make the call I think is damn right. I sell it and I move on. You're not going to please everyone. And if I was, I wouldn't be worth a damn. But, change is hard.
It is.
And pointing out glitches in the system is hard. So you have to have someone with a lot of intestinal fortitude that can withstand some of the pushback that you get. And most entities really don't want, the trouble or whatever other words you might want to call with it that comes with doing something like that. So I wish there were other cities. I do. I wish that I wasn't. My concern, of course, is what happens after I'm gone.
Right. What's your background? Like when you said you were working at the mayor's office, I'm just curious so people can see what that track is.
Yeah, when I graduated from school with a Bachelor of Criminal Justice degree, and I was actually a parole and probation agent for about 8 years. So I chased Houston's finest all over, and I was so frustrated with being in the system, what I was seeing. I saw so many people becoming victims that shouldn't have become victims. And then the turning point was in 1990. We had a severe prison overcrowding crisis in Texas, and 8 out of every 10 parole eligible inmate was being released no matter what they did. If you were eligible, you were walking out, and it was wrecking havoc in the cities, and headlines were gleaming. And I knew what was going on because I was working there, but nobody else knew what was happening. And I actually got a hold of a 3-page quota memo that somehow was FedExed to me. And the memo actually spelled out in writing how many people had to be released from prison daily, weekly, no matter what the circumstances were. I ended up on a little-known show called 48 Hours with that document. And the producer's eyes lit up like a slot machine when she saw that.
Sure, I'm sure they did.
So I like to say I exposed early release in Texas. They in turn gave me my early release. And that's how this all began. So I come from within the criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. So I know all the ins and outs. I know the bureaucracies. I know the red tapes. And the beauty of me is that people in the system who want to see changes know they can get that information to me without having fear of losing their jobs. Mm-hmm. So I'm a tool for them.
That's great. That's great.
It is.
I want to bring Laura in here because when we were at San Quentin about 1.5 years, 2 years ago.
Were you there personally or?
We were physically there.
We were physically there. Not inside, not.
Well, he went inside.
I went inside with Laura.
Okay, so you didn't get paroled. Okay.
No.
Oh, no.
I'm a good boy.
No, not on the inside.
But what we discovered up there while we were up there, and I'll let Laura kind of talk about this. And we've had a lot of the serial killers who are now spread all over the place in California because they took out death row. Laura, tell them what's going on and what some of the serial killers that you're talking about the fact that these guys who were on death row are now possibly looking at getting out.
Yeah, well, I don't think anybody really knows what's going on because of Newsom, but pretty much.
Let's be clear about one thing before we start, is that Newsom did not allow any media up there to cover this. So there was only like very, very little media. We were there.
He didn't know we were there.
He didn't know we were there, but we were there. And the only media he did was in London. And friends of mine who work at Sky News said that he did a 1-hour program in London where he was playing basketball with the death row inmates and saying how they were going to get out on parole.
Yeah.
So go ahead, finish up, Laura.
So it's very strange because the death row is still it's still in place, but pretty much what they've done, but they've dismantled death row. So all of the death row inmates are now in Gen Pop all over the state. They've been transferred out to different prisons. But it seems like he's trying to move towards, and I think the reason why it hasn't gone yet is that people do have to vote on this to get rid of the death penalty, to abolish it completely. But as of right now, they're all back in Gen Pop all over the state.
Yeah. And they're all, the ones we talked to said that their lawyers are talking to them, making cases that they could possibly get out.
Yeah. I mean, they're prepping for it. I mean, it's headed that way.
What do you think, Andy? What's going on there?
Well, if they were in Texas, we wouldn't be talking about them because, frankly, they wouldn't be breathing free air. Again, it makes absolutely zero sense. And it goes back to one of my mantras, is that crime victims are the only unwilling participants in the criminal justice system. Everyone else chose their role: law enforcement, prosecutors, defense attorneys, victim advocates, and of course the offender. Nobody said, pick me, I want to be a victim. And to hear the things of this magnitude that is happening has to be so unnerving for victims' families who thought maybe when that person got sentenced that they could go about healing, rebuilding their lives. They don't have to worry about this again. And then all of a sudden they find themselves sucker punched by a system. And this is why so many people in this country have lost faith in our justice system, because what happens today, and as I like to say, life without parole today doesn't necessarily mean life without parole tomorrow. And you're seeing proof evident of that in California, especially
in New York,
with the elderly parole too. First of all, elderly at 50 years old, get a grip. That's insane. That's an insult.
It is an insult.
No, and I just turned 50, so I take that insult.
It is. I have another question. Like for the Molly Miller and Colt Haynes case, Molly was only 17. And what happened was they were in a car chase with police. The kid that was driving was related to the sheriff, and he had done this many times before where he had gone on these high-speed chases. And the two kids in the car with him, one was 17, that was the girl Molly, and the boy was 21. And they were dealing drugs. There was some kind of drug element happening at that time. But the kid who was driving takes police on this high-speed chase. They go in the woods. Molly and Colt disappear. The driver comes out. And on the 911 call, the 911 dispatch knew who was driving the car.
They identified him in the 911.
And they had an idea of who was in the passenger seat the next day, but an Amber Alert was never released for Molly, even though she was 17. And the sheriff had gone off and told the media that they were runaways. So no one was really looking for them in the beginning. But for that family, the cousin Paula, she had to take on this case basically by herself because law enforcement wasn't doing anything. So what is your advice for people like that where the system fails? The system fails and they're just basically telling you you're crazy, they're gone, they're alive somewhere. And then 13 years to find their bodies.
Obviously you would have to look at Oklahoma's crime victims organizations and see exactly what they've got. And then you've got national organizations, National Center for Victims, that can refer people to the National Office of Victim Assistance Center. And then, of course, there's Texas EquiSearch as well that gets involved with cases like this all over the country. But in areas like Oklahoma, where there's kind of like a devoid of, quote, Andy Kahns of the world that'll go out there, that's what makes it difficult. But in this day and age, via social media, via Zoom, you can contact with people all over the country. So it's important to understand that you're not alone in this battle. that there are resources out there. You just got to make a concerted effort to find them and then get your story told. And I learned very early on in my career, the media would be my most powerful weapon, a tool, an ally, and if properly used, is an agent of change. So I developed relationships with both local and national media. They need me for cute little sound bites. They need me for referrals and so forth. And I need them to expose the wrongs and the glitches and to put the focus on the victim's family as opposed to the defendant. So there's a lot of tools out there. And that's one of the great things about the Victims Hub that we just put out at Crime Stoppers. You can read about all this stuff and access resources as well.
Well, I mean, we also have the Noah Presgrove's family. I don't know if you know about
Another
him.
Oklahoma case.
Another Oklahoma case.
County next door.
He was on the cover of People magazine. Okay. This poor boy was found dead and naked on the side of the road after a party with his friends. All of his friends who were at the party are claiming they don't know what happened to him. But right now, in the beginning, they said it was a hit and run. Then the ME came back and said, no, it was blunt force trauma. But no one's been charged. The family has been beside themselves. They have gotten zero answers.
How long has it been?
It's been 2 years. No one's been charged.
Yeah. And the thing is, both the OHP and the OSBI both handed in their reports because now there's a wrongful death suit going on from that the family's doing because they're not getting any information.
What I would do is I would make your elected officials work for you. They have to have a state representative and a state senator in Oklahoma. Just like our legislator, we have criminal justice committees who I know are obviously all too well. But the same scenario has to be in Oklahoma as well. And if I recall, there was a senator at one time, Brooks Thompson, and he was the one that pushed forward in Oklahoma the rights for victims to witness executions. So I would sit down and request a meeting with one of your elected officials.
Yeah.
And put them to work for you pay their salary.
Listen, I mean, you're based in Houston, correct?
Yeah.
Big, it's like the fourth biggest city in the country. A huge city. This is a small rural Oklahoma town. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's related to everybody. As our friend Cheryl Mack McCullum that we all know, she says there's a lot of home cooking going on down there. So it's like and I think that has been an impediment into this case.
What about the Oklahoma Attorney General?
That I think that's the next step, and that's but you never know who that person's connected to. Oklahoma is different than Texas. It's very different from Texas.
But the other thing that's happened, which is really disturbing, is that the kids who are at the party, it's been divided now. The kids who are at the party and then the victim's family, right? The kids that were at the party their parents have created this social media campaign to victim shame the victim and create all these scenarios to prove their innocence. And this has been going on. I've never seen anything like this, social media.
And then the person who owned the house where the party was at and then the land is a very wealthy landowner. And
let me ask you a quick question. I'm assuming there's Crime Stoppers in Oklahoma. There has to be.
I don't know.
I would look into that, and kind of what we do here on a very similar scenario when we get cases like this is we ask, can we put out a reward flyer? Can we offer, like in Texas, in Houston, we have an up to a $5,000 reward on any felony for any information leading up to the arrest, not a conviction, just the arrest. And all the tipsters are anonymous. We don't know who you are. And you can submit a tip online, phone, mobile app, or whatever. I would also reach out to the local crime staff, whoever is in that jurisdiction, and find out how you can get a reward flyer out.
And can you just walk us through that process? So like if let's just say someone calls in a tip to Crime Stoppers, what's the next thing that happens? What do you guys do next?
So if you call in a tip to Crime Stoppers, you're given a code. So in other words, we actually did a news story where my phone rings because I have people leave me messages and they don't leave me their number because they're under the assumption I have caller ID. We actually did a news story showing my phone reading with blank screen on it as well. So when you reach out to Crime Stoppers and you say, I'd like to, give a tip, you're given a code. The code basically becomes your name. No one asks your name. So if you want to check on the status of your tip, you again call and say, I'd like to check on the status of code AK-47. And if that code actually led to the person actually being charged and arrested, then you're given a second number, and that number basically means where you can pick up your reward money.
Wow.
And
but
again,
on your side, when you guys get a tip, what happens?
we get a tip. Our third floor here is staffed by law enforcement.
Okay, that's my question.
Yeah, I don't get the tips. I forward tips over. So they know how to vet all the nuts and the kooks that call in stuff. They know how to get to the nitty gritty. And then when they get the tip, they refer it to that agency that's handling the investigation.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, that's really good information. We've worked with so many victims' families, and it's just heartbreaking because they really are just, especially with the missing persons cases. Texas EquiSearch has been amazing with the Molly Miller and Colt Haynes case.
I just had a case that's been in the national news on it was a Lover's Lane murder in Houston in 1990. Two young, Andy Atkinson, Cheryl Henry, 21, 23, where Cheryl was sexually assaulted. Andy was bound to a tree. His throat was slit. Cheryl was horrible what happened. That's 1990. I've been with this family almost that long. And 2-3 weeks ago, Wednesday night around 10 o'clock, I get a call. And I'm like, you ready for this? And I'm going, what? He goes, we charged a suspect.
Wow.
In the murders. He's in Nebraska, and she's still fighting extradition, believe it or not. I mean, my jaw dropped. I was dumbfounded, stunned.
Sure.
36 years later. And we did a big press conference with the DA's office, the police department, on how they ended up getting a tip. And it was a tip that led to investigators to look at this guy who had a prior history of impersonating police officers, actually went to prison, and then had a sexual assault, which was dismissed as, quote, consensual. So they had DNA. And they were able to, because the tip led them to that name, that's how they were able to put the puzzle together.
Wow. The DNA hit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
But they wouldn't have got it without the tip.
Amazing. So Laura, talk to us a little bit about what you wanted to talk to Andy about. Your book is coming out, God's Not Here, Only Devils. I've read it.
Awesome. Congrats to Laura on that. That is so
amazing.
Cool. That is. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of admiration and respect for you doing what you did.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, we still, Cindy and Andrea are still up in the mountains, and right now we're still waiting on that, the samples we took for the runoff to see what we got. And next month I'm going to be meeting up with Gloria and with the cadaver dogs and talking about doing all of that. But I was always wondering, what else could we be doing to help, with the searches? Like, what other, because we've gone to the police, we've gone to LAPD, we've gone to the sheriff's department, we've gone everywhere, trying to get a search done for these girls. But there's just no funding is the answer we keep getting.
What do you think, Andy? Where can we go? I mean, because there's no Texas EquiSearch out in California.
No, I mean, obviously, when you are going to do something like this, you alert the local media, and you hope that it's going to be covered. You put it plastered all over social media that you're doing these things, and you just hope to God it finds the right, individual at the right time, might recall something or might get a bolt of conscience. So just exhaust all means, exhaust all measures, of putting it back out there. I'll tell you a story. If you don't believe in divine intervention, the story I'm about to tell you will make you believe it. We had a serial killer in Houston named Coral Eugene Watts. Murdered 13 Houston area women, 1981, 82. He was credited with over 40 nationally, primarily in Michigan, Canada, and Indiana. They cut a deal with him in 1982. He got 60 years for burglary with intent to commit murder. In return, he led authorities to where he buried 3 of the bodies. And under a quirky Texas law, he was actually scheduled to be one of the first serial killers in this country's history ever to be legally released in 2006. He would have done 24 years of a 60-year sentence and racked up 36 years worth of good time. So we did this huge 20th anniversary call to action. We brought in all these families from all over the country, got a lot of national attention. One of the two girls that survived, People Magazine did a story, Will He Kill Again? And in Michigan, where he originally was a suspect and was actually given the nickname the Sunday Morning Slasher, forms a cold case task force. We're getting nowhere. It's 2004, 2 short years before he's going to be released. We did a segment for the Today Show. They reran it that evening on MSNBC. They had the Michigan Attorney General pleading for the public's help in a 1979 murder. They had a sketch of the suspect. The guy comes home from a suburb of Detroit, and he does what guys do. He picks up the remote, starts flipping channels, and he stops on that segment. He sees it, and he screams to his wife, "That's the guy I saw kill the girl in the alley 25 years ago." Wow. The next day, he calls the Michigan Attorney General's office, and at first they're like, "Yeah, sure, bud." They go back and they look. He's listed as an eyewitness in a 1979 murder. It was sitting in a filing cabinet in Ferndale, Michigan, because they thought he was doing a light sentence in Texas, and they filed it away. That was the case they ultimately ended up charging him with and then convicting him of first-degree murder in Michigan, preventing him from being legally, but all because this guy at that very moment in time. But if we don't do what we do and get a massive campaign out there to alert the public, and if we don't do these segments, he ain't home flipping channels and he never sees it.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing.
I love that story because it gives people hope.
It does. It does. And now it's easier because we have social media, Exactly. So now with our platform, we're able to do these things and put the word out there. So
yeah, this is the discussion I'd like to talk about is where, at what point, because there's such a divided line between sometimes some law enforcement not wanting the public's help, and then they wait until they exhaust everything they do, and then they bring the public in. So to me, it's just like, why can't it be all at the same time? Because it seems it's evident that public's help a lot of times helps the case, but a lot of times from a law enforcement perspective, they want to insulate all the information because they don't, because they says it protects the investigation. But when you have a case that, like the Noah Presgrove case and the Molly Miller and Cole Haynes, Molly Miller and Cole Haynes cases were, over a decade. Noah's is like 2 years, and still nothing's really being done. So at what point do you think it's important, because you use the press so effectively in Crime Stoppers, at what point should you start?
I'll give you a multifaceted answer because I work very closely with law enforcement as well. And from a law enforcement perspective, and each case has to be looked on its own merit. A lot of times they have a suspect in mind, okay? And they don't want to spook the suspect by getting all this information out. They're just trying to build a case on there, so they don't want people talking about it, airing about it. They're trying to build a case. So I understand it from that perspective as well. And then where we come in, a lot of times it's because law enforcement has basically lost, they don't have anything else. So they want to appeal to the public. And one of my pet lines that I always say at a press conference, which I actually did this morning at 10 a.m., was that the public is our best eyes and ears out there. Mm-hmm. They are the ones who know exactly who did this, and we ask them to step up to the plate and do the right thing. So it's a fine line of balancing for law enforcement as well, and between victims' families that, of course, are clamoring to get the case out there as well.
Yeah, because we just yesterday, we got a tip on the Molly Miller and Colt Haynes case that was in line with a lot of the information that we heard from other witnesses early on. And she's been sitting on this thing. She was 15 at the time. So it was just like, she's finally, now that they found it, she never thought people didn't think the bodies were going to be found. They didn't think they were going to be ID'd. Now that that's all out there, she felt compelled to reach out to us. And the first thing we asked her is said, have you spoken to law enforcement before you speak to us? And she says she did early on. She said, nothing went, I got no follow-up. And I go, since you've spoken right now, have you spoken to law enforcement? And she said she has. And then I confirmed with the law enforcement that's into the case, because we have a good communication with them as well. I said, have you spoken to this person? And I got the okay. I said, yeah. I go, all right. So we had them on the podcast yesterday. It just dropped today. And obviously we protected her ID and all that, and her voice and stuff like that. But she's been sitting on this case for over a decade. And, so I'm saying there's a lot of more people out there that probably knows information about this case. So we always tell people, if you know something, you got to come out and say it. I mean, she doesn't looking for a reward or anything.
Right.
Her conscience made her do it.
Well, we actually have a lot of people that give the tips that lead to the arrest that don't claim the reward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they just want to get it off their chest, or they just want to do the right thing. So, yeah, I get it. And a lot of times, I'll tell families, I said, keep in touch with your investigators, whether it's an email or whatever. A lot of times they haven't forgot about you, but they're bogged down in so many different cases that they're trying to juggle as well. And they're only good as the information they get, just like anything else. So they rely on the public as well. So my position is I like getting stuff out there, but I also understand from law enforcement perspective why there are cases in which you don't until you exhausted all options.
Yeah, no, it's a fine line. And I just, and ironically, a lot of times we get referred by law enforcement to go look into cases because they realize that the bureaucracy of government sometimes prevents them from doing it. And also because they can't devote time to it because it's cold, and and they have other hot cases that they have to focus on. So I think it's important that, and we always tell victims, we said, you have to be your own advocate in this, because no one's going to be as powerful as you about your story.
We do certain events throughout the year at Crime Stoppers. We do a National Day of Remembrance, which is actually held annually across the country in September, which we bring all families who lost loved ones from cases who've been solved to unsolved cases. And then we also do an Unsolved Homicide Day, in which we have families come to Crime Stoppers. We video them, and then we put it out there.
Yeah, it's important. It's important that people understand that they're not helpless in this endeavor.
I want to ask Laura a question. When's the big unveiling?
Of which project? The book?
The book. Yes.
It's now, I believe, it's June 25th.
So we're going to have like a big bash,
I would love to have like a 1979 theme party.
Yeah.
Just the whole era. I did some research into 1979, so I hope it also comes off as nostalgic for people too.
I mean, what you did to me is absolutely amazing. I mean, sit down. I've got 2.5 hours of footage. I've been corresponding with the son of Sam, David Berkowitz, for 20 some odd years, and actually went up and met with him. I'm scheduled to do it again next year. And I have, like I said, almost 3 hours of footage of him and I. And then I got volumes of our correspondence. It takes a very special person to do what you did, Laura.
Thank you.
I commend you for that. When the world needs more of you as well. Not only, like I said, when I wrote my perspective on your book, the fact that you took it from several different angles and you never lost emphasis on the victims of Bittaker and Norris. That was very important.
Yeah.
Handy, have you ever had a chance to see her in action?
No.
I was able, when that time we went up to San Quentin, I was able to get in the cage with her and David Carpenter, serial killer. He's like probably the oldest serial killer on the planet. He's like 96. And it was really interesting, sitting in that 6x3 cage, he's not handcuffed, and the guards are right outside. And it was really interesting to see how she worked. We were in there for 3 hours in that small space. So, and she did that. She does it regularly, and not only that, what I find interesting is that, you can never, don't even try to leave a voicemail for her on her phone, because it's always packed with, because she gets these serial killers calling her at will all the time. We've had them on the podcast. We actually have a serial killer roundtable that we've created to kind of bring them on and get their perspective on potential cases that may or may not be serial killer cases.
Actually, last month, David Berkowitz called me, and he finally got permission to reach out and call me. And he was actually calling me about a case and wanted some help involving the New York Crime Stoppers. So yes, I get it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But hey, they were right. Like, we did the serial killer roundtable with them, and the things that they were saying all of a sudden started happening. We were like, oh my God, they actually are correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
In what they're telling us in their thought process.
I got about 5 minutes. I've got to run with you. I got to run to actually an event with the district attorney's office. It's National Crime Victims' Rights Week these days, and which actually should be every day, but we get a whole week where we can bring attention to victims' rights and the collateral damage of the criminal justice system that is done to crime victims. But I'll leave you with this thought. Have you ever seen the movie Gladiator?
Of course.
There's a great line when I always close my presentations when Maximus is exhorting his troops, and he says, what we do in life echoes in eternity. And that's what I try to do as a victim advocate. I cannot go back and change what happened to you or your family, but we try to make things better for others to come along, and you've achieved a lasting legacy. Taking a negative and turning into positive action for social change is a powerful narcotic. And that's what I try to do in my role. And I try to bring other victims so that I can pass on the torch as well.
Well, fantastic. God bless you.
Amazing. So great to see you, Andy. We look forward to seeing you at CrimeCon.
Awesome. It's going to be great.
Fantastic.
All right. I got to run. Take care, guys.
Okay.
You
Bye.
bet. Bye.
Laura, stay there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So a couple of things we want to talk to you about anyway. All right. So now Gilgo Beach guy goes out and confesses.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Yeah. You've been following this, I'm sure.
Lightly. I've been working on book 2, so I'm kind of in a bubble, but I've heard he's agreeing to talk and, aid in research, which I think is incredible. Yeah, because what else? For them just to sit on death row, or for them to sit in prison, what does it help anybody? You know what I mean? So I think this is like a movement we should start going towards. If we're not going to, move towards the death penalty in our society, we have to look at this as like research and study. And I've always said that. And a lot of people are against it, but you're not going to get into their minds, or that famous quote by Mindhunter, to get ahead of crazy, you have to know how crazy thinks. And we're only going to get there by talking to these guys, which you've seen. Now the viewers have seen it with the roundtable.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think you'd be able to get in to talk to him?
Yeah. I've been thinking, I followed his case all the way back from the early 2000s. Like before anybody knew about that case, I was following it.
Yeah.
I grew up on Long Island. That case scared the hell out of everybody, because even girls that were just jogging, one of them was just swiped. It wasn't just all prostitutes. It was other women too. And it's sad that because it was prostitutes in the beginning, they just dismiss it like they do with most of these cases.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And that's the sad part.
There's something about him that his pathology reminds me a little about Bittaker.
Really?
Because he was a very smart guy. He's an architect. And, he had this, but just the way he went about things, and the fact that he was, and I'm still not convinced that they probably knew who he was sooner than when they actually arrested him, because that area, there was a couple very corrupt police officers that were in that area at the time, who may or may not have known what was going on. But there was something about just the way I've heard him speak. It's very similar to the way I've heard Bittaker speak, very intellectually wise and articulate. And, because Bittaker was very articulate. about it. And he doesn't sound like a killer.
No.
You know, when you're talking to him, when he's talking about whatever, when you had him, you know, all the recordings that we've heard, you know, when you peel back the layers and when you get more specific, it's obviously you realize the guy's the devil. And, but there's some similarities. I mean, I don't know how much his victims were tortured like Bittaker did, but I see there's some commonalities there. And I'm really curious to see if you'll be able to get in or either correspond with him. I don't even know where he is because I don't even think he's been sentenced yet.
He's probably going to go to Rikers, I would imagine.
They closed Rikers.
Did they close Rikers?
Yeah, I think they've closed Rikers since the new mayor came in. I think, or in the process of closing it.
They're in the process.
Yeah.
Then he'll probably go. He might go upstate.
Yeah. Well, Rikers is just a jail anyway, so I'm sure it's going to be upstate somewhere, and it's going to be. But I don't know if he's even there yet. I think he's still the point where he's the last thing about a month ago when he was talking about how they cut a deal with him, how he's going to cooperate and tell what he did, how he did it, you know, just for the learning part. And then his wife has been pretty vocal and out there too. The only thing that I thought it was interesting is that, you know, I think Peacock NBC gave the family like $2 million to tell their story, which I thought was interesting. But,
I've heard that too. Yeah.
I have a question for you. So I was thinking about this after I read your book, the first part 1. Tell us a little bit about part 2, and then I want to ask you a question.
You mean the second book?
Yeah. What are you working on right now?
I mean, once you finish the first one, you know, it's too massive of a story to put into one book. So it kind of ends, you know, right after Andrea Hall is taken. So book 2 picks up from that point. And it's also kind of like the documentary, like it goes back and forth from, you know, 2019 to 1979, but it's laid out in sequence of, you know, everything that happened in that year. And also in 2008, 2019, my interviews with Bittaker. And I would say book 1 is almost setting the table. You're seeing them meet in prison and you're meeting me and more of my story. And then book 2 is like when it really starts to just jump into everything. And this is where it's almost like a slow burn, but then fireworks, because this is where now you're going to see them more in action, more how they hunt. Is you're going to get a real bird's eye view of that, of 2 serial killers out in the world hunting and the things they were doing and the ruses they would use, the trolling methods, everything. You see that in book 2. You see it in book 1 too, but book 2 really gets into it. And then my interviews with Bittaker and going more in depth. And when I got the police discovery and everything that unfolded from that Pandora's box, and now there's all these mentions of all these victims and so on. So it's really just diving more into depth of the real story of it.
Oh, yeah. He's throwing up. He's going to throw up. Hold on, the baby's sick. Poor little boo-boo.
Oh,
sorry. Oh, I hate when he does that. It scares me.
I know.
I don't know why they have to do that.
It's sick.
It's just like I don't know. Hold on. File from what, baby? We're taking you to the vet. That's the second time. Go on to the vet. Okay.
Okay.
Did he eat his food this morning?
I don't know.
All right. So I had a question for you. Being in the cage with dozens serial killers plus, right? We're talking dozens of serial killers. You've been in the cage with them, sitting across from them. You know, when you get introduced to people or when you're standing next to people, you get a vibe, you get an energy. And you look at their eyes. Do these killers, do they have something in common? Do their eyes lack something? Is there anything when you're looking physically in their eyes? Do you see anything? Like, I was always curious, like, what does that feel like to look at them in the eyes like that?
Well, I know, because you always hear like the psychopaths have like those black eyes. It's not consistent. Their eyes will change. They can look very normal, but it's almost when they get into that hunt mode or that that sexual depravity mode, the sexual sadist type of mode, when they go into those certain modes, you will see a blackening of the eyes. The pupils do dilate. Or when they're reliving it, when you're interviewing them and they're talking about it, you'll see the pupils dilate. And it turns black. But I wouldn't look at like somebody and be like, okay, is there black in their eyes? Is their pupils dilated? Because when you first walk in the cage, I mean, the eyes are normal. It's just when they're going into that mode, you will see that change happen.
When they're reliving the experience.
Yeah. Yes.
Even if the person has light eyes.
Yeah, like Bittaker had crystal blue eyes.
Yeah.
Like crazy blue. Like I would describe it as like in water blue. But then when he would relive it, they would turn black with the
pupil would enlarge.
Yeah. But otherwise he had like the lightest blue eyes imaginable.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Have they ever done a study where they had them rigged up to measure their vitals while they're talking about this stuff?
I know they've done it with, the brain scans and like had them look at pictures. They've done it like that. I don't know if they've done specifically, have them relive it and had them hooked up, but that would be an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to see how it is, like, how their parasympathetic nervous system just kind of takes over.
Right.
Heart rate increases, the blood flow increases, the pupils dilate. Exactly. They're tapping into that part of the brain that fulfilled that need.
Yeah. Well, John and I have talked about that a lot because it would be so amazing to have more of those studies done. Mm-hmm. And there's not too many of them. And it's kind of like getting the cameras into the prison, bringing that equipment in. You get blocked by the prison a lot of the time, or, just to be able to bring in that equipment to even do this type of stuff. There's a lot of bureaucracy involved and that kind of stuff, unfortunately.
Yeah. Wow. Laura's book is amazing. Everyone has to read it when it comes out. It's a page turner. It's really well done. We're so proud of her. It's amazing. So we'll keep you posted on that. We're also going to start having more guests on, going back to our serial killer roundtable. And this week we have a special guest that'll be released tomorrow, but I guess it doesn't matter because this isn't going out today.
No.
Never mind. Sorry.
Do an alternate wrap up.
Anyway, Laura's book, God's Not Here, Only Devils, is going to be out in June. It is an amazing true crime book, and you have to just get into it because it's a page turner, and it'll really give you insight into who these killers are, unlike anything I've read in a really long time. So in the next couple of weeks, Laura, we're going to have other guests on who've read the book, but also going back to the serial killer roundtable to kind of dive more into the minds of these killers. So Thank you, Laura. It was great to see Andy again today and give victims' families hope. And
he's a superstar.
He really is. So,
well, I have an update. Lynette, whenever her episode airs, this will be after her episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She just got a letter from Trump.
Really?
Yeah.
What did it say?
What did it say?
I don't know. It was literally, we were going on air and I just got the thing that Trump had written to her. He had heard about, the struggle she's going through and everything. And she just received a letter.
Wow.
We should definitely get her back on and have her talk about that.
Exactly.
Because it's going to be on tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, good.
Amazing.
Close your eyes. Listen to Monday.com. Feel the sensation of an AI work platform. So flexible and intuitive, it feels like it was built just for you. Now open your eyes, go to Monday.com, start for free, and finally breathe.